Do you have trouble remembering things? We're going to talk about your memory on this episode of the Driving with Rob podcast. Memory problems are often associated with getting older. None of us like to think about getting older, but it happens. It happens to everybody. And if your memory gets bad enough, they say that's the early warning signs of Alzheimer's. We don't even like to think about dementia and Alzheimer's, but it's a perfectly natural and normal thing to start having memory problems as you get older. Well, I have a theory based on no scientific fact and no research. This is just my personal opinion on why you have memory problems. See, I believe, just like the memory space on your computer, that human beings have a finite memory space. You can only cram so much into your memory until it won't take anymore. And you've tried to train your brain into not keeping the non-essential, non-important things foremost in your mind. Over time, your brain has learned to prioritize what's important, what's not important. And over many years of use, your brain has trained itself to understand that your son's birthday is more important than where did I put my keys. And I hate to admit it, but this has happened to me more than once. I'm walking through the house, obviously looking for something. And my wife says, "What did you lose?" "I can't find my keys." She said, "What's in your hand?" Ugh. I was holding them the whole time. You ever lose your reading glasses because they're up on top of your head? Have you ever just frustrated yourself and driven yourself crazy looking for something because you knew you had it? You just didn't know where you put it. You laid it down somewhere and now you don't know where it is. I have even put things away so that I would know where it was and forgot where I put it. I try to make lists when I go to the store so that I won't forget anything while I'm in the store. And you know what happened? I laid the list down and forgot where I put it. Or I forgot to pick up the list as I picked up my keys and wallet. And then I remember as I'm in the store reaching for the note that I left that note. I left that list at home on the kitchen counter. But you asked me about an event that happened when I was a kid, and I can remember every detail. I've had my kids interrupt me in the middle of a story to tell me it didn't happen that way. Well, I don't necessarily think that that's a memory issue as much as it is good storytelling. And I'll give you an example. We had a retired colleague from work who passed away. So a lot of the guys from work who worked with this man and for this man showed up at the funeral. Well, our buddy Phil, during the service, ended up sitting between the first shift supervisor and the department manager. So naturally, when we're telling the story later to the guys who weren't able to go to the funeral about how Phil elbowed his way through the crowd so he could sit between the supervisor and the manager. And every time we told the story, it got better and better. In the later version of the story, Phil pushed people out of the way so that he could get up front to sit with the manager. By that afternoon, he had pushed an old woman down, and thankfully, she had her walker with her so she could get back up again. But that's just good storytelling. That's not a memory issue. I'm talking about the simple, everyday, mundane things that we forget. I think it's down to prioritization. Your brain prioritizes what to remember and what not to remember because you have already filled your brain with so much knowledge. By the time you get to be a certain age, you've seen so much and heard so much and done so much, there's no room for new information. I remember going to the doctor for a checkup, and he has this little questionnaire that he goes through, any unusual bruising? Do you have any dizziness? Do you have any ringing in your ears? Have you had any memory problems? How would I know? I may have. But I think it really comes down to finite memory space, and your brain is prioritizing what to remember and what not to remember. I'm to the point now that I'm going to have to forget a whole lot of stuff and delete some things from my memory before I can learn anything new. They always say you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Well, I think that's why. Because you've already learned so much, there's no more space available. Your brain is completely full. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I haven't become forgetful. My wife came in the living room one day and she said, "Are you getting ready?" And I said, "Ready for what?" "We're supposed to be at thus and such at 7 o'clock. You didn't say anything to me about it." She said, "I certainly did." I said, "Was I looking directly at you when you told me?" She said, "Well, you were watching TV." Well, see, I never registered that in my brain because I never really heard it in the first place. Just because you said it didn't mean that I heard it. And even if I heard it, it didn't necessarily register in my brain as a conscious memory that I needed to hold on to. I didn't forget. But they will chalk that up as to, well, you're getting forgetful. I'm not getting forgetful. Just over 50 plus years of living, I've learned to prioritize and discriminate and decide what to remember and what not to remember. I have so many thoughts in my head at this point, I have to be able to filter out the non-essential thoughts in my head. I believe this is true for all of us. If it's a significant emotional event, you have a tendency to remember it. That's why people say, "Where were you on 9/11? When the Twin Towers were attacked, what were you doing? Where were you?" Everybody has a story. Everybody can tell you exactly where they were and exactly what they were doing. Because this was a significant emotional event. Psychologists call it a SEE, S-E-E. It had an impact on you, and it caused you to remember it. But that's a topic for another podcast. The point that I'm making is things like that, you don't have a problem remembering. Your wedding day, or the actual wedding itself. When a close relative or a loved one passed away, you remember what you were doing. You remember how you felt. But the day-to-day stupid memories, like where did I leave my keys? Did I buy apple cider vinegar when I went to the store? I meant to. The little insignificant day-to-day things like that are easy to forget. They're very forgettable. But I believe that once you reach a certain age, the reason you can't remember stuff is because you've reached the limit of your memory capacity. You've already remembered way too many things that you probably should forget. And until you can delete some stuff from your memory, you're not going to be able to make room for anything new. I don't believe human beings have an unlimited memory space. I think once it's full, it's full. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. And that's going to do it for this episode of the podcast. I appreciate you listening. I appreciate you downloading. And try to remember to listen in to my next podcast. All right? Thanks a lot. I'll talk to you later. Bye now.